So yeah, this is just a little overview of what this evening's going to look like, but we want it to be kind of informal and shaped by you. So we're happy to take questions throughout and at the end as well. So we thought we'd just do a bit of an introduction to camera trapping and why you might use camera trapping. We do also have a lot of extra resources that we can share. Residents who attended on Monday, some of this might be repetitive, so feel free to just join in for whatever bits are useful to you. We'll then be going through some of the camera trap footage. So for those of you who weren't there on Monday, we put up 5 camera traps around an urban garden in Bristol, mainly looking for badgers. So we've got some from that and then some extra special footage that I managed to capture. I think it was last year. And then we'll have a bit of a talk about how do you actually go about processing camera trap footage, so getting it from a camera trap onto your laptop. And then Amy's going to talk a bit about how you might report sightings that you get from camera traps and how that can be useful for local record centres. And then any questions, basically Q&A, any questions you want to know about camera traps after that. Is there anything you want to add to that, Amy?
No, that's very complete summary. Let's crack on through. So we did touch on this at the first workshop, but there's many reasons why somebody might want to use a camera trap. I've listed a few here. You might just want to see who's visiting your garden. Obviously, we've focused our attention on a terrestrial mammal here, but you can use camera traps to capture any sort of movement. You might want to use it on bat boxes to see whether or not bats are starting to utilize boxes you've put up. You might want to use it, to keep an eye on your bird feeders. You might have built hedgehog hides and you think somebody's using it and you're not too sure. There's heaps of reasons. Is anybody in the group already whose microphone may or may not work used camera traps previously, or got any examples of things that they might have used the camera trap for?
I've got camera traps in my garden, and initially, when we moved here in 2007, we were getting seemed to be lots of activity at night. So that was my first venture into camera trapping. Was probably back then about 2008 when
nice.
we got a trap to find we had like deer, badger, and foxes in the garden.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
That was quite exciting. So we do. I try and keep the camera trap there every night. And it's like surprising what you get. We haven't had deer for the last 3 years, but
that's pretty consistent. So you keep the camera in the same sort of position, but you just make sure that it's recording each evening and then sort of review it every few days. How does that work?
Yeah, and I sometimes move it around as well. So because we have chickens, so if I wanted to see if there were rats around the chicken run, I will. I've actually got it onto a bird table, onto a wooden bird table. So I just moved the bird table around the garden.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's a good idea. Once you've got it set up, you kind of want to keep it in a good place.
Yeah, so I just kind of moved that around the garden because on the upright of the bird feeder. So
yeah, brilliant. I mean, we'll see later on a great example of it, but with camera traps, once you've put them out and then you're going back to look for them, they blend very, very well into their environment. But it's really interesting how sensitive certain animals are to new objects in their environments. Our end of our garden or our local park is that animal's back garden, and so they know it like the way we know our own homes.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how you'll add something as small and inconspicuous as a camera, and then maybe a few days into trapping you've got an animal right up close or interacting with it, or yeah, it's crazy. But that's really cool. So yeah, you use it almost for pest control sometimes, looking out for any unwanted visitors around the chicken coops. I've popped on there about stealing cats' dinner. Sometimes you want to know whether you want to fill that hole at the end of the garden in or not, and a camera trap's a really good way of seeing, oh, actually that hole's being utilized by a species I do want rather than a species that I don't. You might also want to use one, as touched on with the bat boxes, to see whether the wildlife actions that you've invested in, maybe you've bought feeders or you've built some hibernacular, you might just want to see if it's being utilized. And something that I haven't had much experience with, but Emma definitely has, capturing footage for creative purposes. You might just want to create you might want to capture footage to celebrate the wildlife that's in your area, or, you know, to actually evidence it. So there's heaps of different reasons why we'd use camera traps. And that photo there actually is one of the younger people that came to the event on Monday. They took heed of Emma's stick trick and wedged a great big wedge-shaped rock behind the camera to get like the optimum angle of view from the tree.
So just to sum up the stick trick for anyone who wasn't there on Monday, often if you just put the camera trap flat on the tree or post or whatever surface, that isn't a good angle for what you're looking at. So you can get various sticks and logs and stones and whatever, and either put them in the top, which will angle the camera downwards, or in the bottom, which will angle it upwards. So you can get quite creative, like you saw here with this rock, with what you can put in it. So yeah, just an overview of kind of what did we capture this week and what were we doing this week. So the residents at the filming location very kindly welcomed us on site at their garden, and we put up camera traps to see what we would find. So I'm going to go through some of the footage now. You might spot yourselves if you were a resident attending the event. So just wanted to say that a lot of the footage you can get will be you setting up and taking down the cameras. And actually that can be quite a good way to test if the camera is actually working. So you should, in theory, have quite a lot of pictures and videos of your face really close up. So this one's a video as an example. So you can see Amy and a local resident setting it up, and then the other two are pictures.
Also, it's probably a good time to mention, when Emma and I collected in some of the, we collected in all of the cameras today, we did find that a couple of them hadn't gone into recording mode, which is something that can happen sometimes, whether it's just, you know, not pressing the buttons hard enough or not double checking it. I think because we were very excited and we had lots of people, we probably should have returned and just done a walk around. But when you do if you set up a camera yourself, leaving it for like, you know, 5 minutes, having a walk back in front of it, and then going back to the camera and checking that it's recorded that footage is a great way of avoiding what we ended up having, which was a few cameras that didn't get anything and a few cameras that got some really nice footage. So yeah, utilizing these like sort of what would you call them, bloopers, is actually quite helpful to make sure that the camera's doing what you want it to do.
And I think that's the nice thing. I like using camera traps. So if I go back to the slide where you can see a picture of it, these are the camera traps I use, and I really like using ones with a screen on the outside, or at least some kind of screen, because then you can go back, you can have a look at the footage, and you actually have a better idea of what you're setting up in the moment. A lot of the fancier, bigger ones don't have any screen or any way to tell what you're looking at, and you kind of just have to judge and hope you're standing in the right place. But that's why I like screens personally.
Also, you can see here, if you see on the right hand photo where George has got his tripod, where he came to video the event, where my hand, I'm kind of doing the robot a little bit. That's a great example where I set up the camera, that was sort of about waist height on a large tree. So I, from doing it previously, knew that I was about roughly going to get the two sort of mammal pathways that we wanted to capture there. But if you weren't sure whether you were going to capture the full image, you could actually just walk around the location and use different parts of your body to think, right, if I want to be capturing something small and close to the ground, if I walk around in front of the camera and then check the footage that's recorded, has it captured my feet, or is it just getting my waist or my arms or my shoulders or my head? So yeah, these sorts of blooper recordings are really handy, and especially with the cameras that Emma has with those front-facing cameras, you can just go back and instantly check that. But I think with the camera that was won by, who won it again? It was Jenny. Yeah, so Jenny, your one, it doesn't have that front-facing camera. It's a higher quality, like standard camera, but or unit. But yeah, you will sort of take it out and pop it back into your computer because you don't have that review screen. So you'll have to pop it back in the computer and just check whether it's worked or not.
Brilliant. So then if we're going to move up, we're building up here. We're building up to the really exciting footage. So we started with the people, your face, setting up. And then some residents from the site might spot their pets here. So we got quite a few cats and dogs wandering around the badger set. And then the bottom left is a pigeon. So it's not very exciting, but you can tell what it is. And sometimes it's just nice having a picture of what's there, even if it's just your cat, your dog, your pigeon. And then, so unfortunately, this was just a still. It didn't actually capture a video of this. So this is a fox. So local residents, you have a fox as well as badgers on site, which is very exciting. And I guess this is a good point to mention some preferred settings. So on this camera that captured this was capturing both pictures and videos. Personally, I just like to have it on the video setting because then it would capture everything and it would just be rolling and it would get that movement. Whereas here is what's happened is it's taken a picture, and in the process when it's been capturing the picture, by the time it got to taking the video, the fox had moved on. Whereas if you'd had video from the beginning, you could have, maybe seen it. So you get a nice blurry picture of a fox to show that it's moving fast.
Yeah.
And now we get to the very, very exciting badgers. So local residents will probably recognise where this is. This is looking onto the badgers' main set. So the area, the burrows where they're living and spending most of their time. So there's several in this video, so keep your eyes out for how many are there.
There's the one. Often you see the eye reflections before you see anything else with these infrared videos. Is there any way we can zoom in on that video, Emma?
I can go back at the end and play them full screen, maybe.
Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah, that'd be nice.
If that helps. I'll play this one as well. So it takes a while, but keep your eye on the bottom left-hand corner and then moving very fast.
Very rambunctious little badgers you have down there.
So you can, I don't know if you want to explain, Amy, a bit like about the behavior and like the play and why that's cool.
Yeah, so we discussed at the time about different animals' capacities for emotion and what we know about badger behavior based on the research that's done so far on many different mammals, not just badgers. And my rather biased opinion as an Avon Wildlife Trust employee is that, of course, badgers have emotions. They're relatively large mammals, the same way that our cats and dogs are. And to be able to coexist in a set unit, so the sets that they live in are occupied by clans, and a clan is generally quite a large mixed family group. So there might be one genetic family with maybe a visitor male that's come to pair off with a female, and then they won't live in the main set, but they'd live in one of the outlier sets. And again, mentioned on the event, badgers are very gregarious and allopatric animals, which means that they will return to the same locations for generations and generations. And we actually have recorded sets that people have managed to track back about 400 years. And what badgers will do is they'll have their main set, they'll have outlier sets where sort of adolescent males or males that have been kicked out of the family will go and reside before they go and conquer new territory. They'll have annexes where maybe if two females get pregnant at the same time and there isn't quite enough space in one set, one might relocate. But for them to live in these larger family units, up to sort of 8 to 10 badgers, they have to get along. And this behavior we see in the captured footage below is really sort of stereotypical adolescent teenage badger play. You can sort of look at it in the very formal sense of they're preparing themselves to fight when they eventually move out and establish new territories, or you can see it as a group of likely brothers that are just giving each other a bit of run for their money because they've been in their set all day. So yeah, this sort of behavior, this playful behavior, is really classic of badgers. that you'll also see them on an evening. One of the first behaviors they'll do is clean themselves. They'll come out, they'll sort of lie on their back and give their bellies a good scratch, and they'll clean themselves off. They also remove their bedding from their set. So if you have a set in your own garden, or you see a badger set with sort of strange hay-like grassy nesting material, that will be the badgers actually managing their own parasites. They drag all of their bedding out every few weeks. They'll leave it in a sunny spot, and then the sun will help get rid of any ticks or fleas, and then they'll drag it back in. I think they've aired out the laundry, and they'll have it in for another few weeks. So they're really, really interesting animals, and we're very lucky to have such a large mammal still native in the UK. And this is some great footage collected. It's a shame almost, because we did have some really fantastic camera locations that had been chosen by the people that turned up on Monday. And when you do sort of have multiple perspectives of the same set, sometimes you can see that there might actually be double or triple the number of badgers that you thought. On this end we've seen the youngsters, but they might be using one set, and their great big mum or dad might have come out the other end, or maybe their younger siblings that have been born this spring might have been coming out of another hole. It's really nice to see the footage. But if we do one of these events again, maybe we'll definitely triple check the cameras to make sure they're rolling as planned. But you can sort of capture the access points as well. You can, as we had chosen at the recording location, we had chosen an area where local residents had said that they've seen them sort of running past, and that can be useful in your own space. If you're thinking, I know there's an animal coming in here, but I don't know where, you can almost sort of snoop on them by tactically placing your camera until you can see the access point.
And I think what was nice about that previous footage as well is when you just get one badger or one animal on a video, it's hard to know if you're looking at the same animal unless you become really, really familiar with their features. Whereas what you can see there, you can see three very clearly. So you automatically know there's at least 3 badgers in that set, and they're likely to have cubs. So yeah, it gives you an idea of numbers. Sue, I can see you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask something?
Yeah, it was just thank you for that word. I didn't know the was it allopatric?
Allopatric, yeah. So they really love their kind of like toads, that they'll always return to ancestral areas unless otherwise, if there's pressures on surrounding clans, then they'll start encroaching on each other, because maybe one of there's been a fence put up and they can't get into their usual patch to forage, so they might start pushing over into another one. But generally they will just use, and that's why sometimes you'll come across huge sets that might have 20 or 30 holes, but only about 8 badgers using them. And there'll be, of all the holes in the area, there might only be 2 or 3 that are really clearly well worn. And that's just because that year, that's the ones that the small group that are utilizing it have chosen. But yeah,
I think they like to deliberately be difficult. Like when you set camera traps up and there's 5 or 6 holes and you've covered about 3 of them, I guarantee you they'll come up at the ones where you haven't set a camera trap up.
Probably.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the other thing I was just going to say as well, if it's okay, was because I mean in my back garden as well, because the badgers always seem to follow the same path. So we have in our back garden, there's like an indent, in the ground where the badgers always go. Like for years, they've traveled the same path. So it's a really good thing. I know when we looked at Pill Paddock as well, that we've got animal trails there. And I suppose that's good places to put cameras as well. If you find like a specific animal trail, even if it's not a big path, that you've got like a trail that animals are using.
Yeah, absolutely. Mammal tracks are really fantastic indicators of important movement corridors for animals in the landscape. Generally, it is larger animals that leave more significant paths, but in the case of badgers, they have really terrible eyesight but fantastic sense of smell. So if they find a route that's sort of their fastest route in and out of a location, or fastest route back to their safe space, which is their set, then they're going to make sure that they're always following that all the way from sort of, when young cubs are leaving the den at this sort of time of year and they're first starting to forage, they're going to follow mum, which means that they're going to follow those paths. So it just becomes really ingrained. And unless, again, there's been, a disruption to that path, they generally don't veer too far off of it. Can you see it from the window in your garden? I know in the recording location, you can definitely see where they've been. They make it very apparent.
It wasn't coming up on the camera. It wasn't showing. I can see it, but it's not clear on the camera.
I'm sure as a gardener, you're very aware of where the where the disruption is.
I garden for wildlife, though. I don't care. I'd rather have it there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a good sign.
And I guess, yeah, in the case of the residents at this location as well, that we also had a camera trap looking under a gate where you could see their belly marks. Residents said that's where they like to slide under. Unfortunately, that was one of the camera traps that I think that one has stopped working altogether. Unfortunately, it wasn't due to how it was set up. So, but that would be a good place, somewhere where you know regularly that they're using that space.
Yeah, definitely.
And then let me do it like this and play some more footage. So this is, you can see the timestamp about 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's a bit lighter. You can see the quality of the footage. Is that shifting between, it's still in infrared, but you can see it maybe a bit more clearly. And then this is same day, but an hour earlier. So you can just see it plodding along. And exactly what we were just talking about, they seem to use this path in and out of the set very reliably. That's their main route.
Yeah, nose close to the floor, just plodding along, searching for earthworms.
I love watching them. They're so charismatic.
Now, this is a great video. Do you want to give a little bit of background on how you managed to be quite in such a perfect position for this, Emma?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we didn't manage to capture any baby badgers at the location on Monday. It's not to say they're not there. It's very likely that little ones will be exploring at this time of year. So kind of tempted to put more camera traps up to check that they're there. But this is in a location near me, also in Bristol. And I was actually here changing one of my camera traps over, heard this little squeaking, snuffling behind me, turn around really slowly because I thought, oh my goodness, am I going to be charged by a big male badger? This is a really bad position to be in. And it turned out it was a tiny little cub. It was probably a few months old. Its eyesight was really bad, so it didn't see me. And it was just snuffling around. So, oh, I'm going to play you a little montage of clips of badger cubs that I managed to capture on camera traps last year. And this is all using those little ones that we did set up, which unfortunately didn't record, just to give you an idea of the quality.
Yeah, it's a testament to how poor their eyesight is, isn't it? The fact you were stood literally above the hole and he's just
they're pretty blind.
Oh, this is a fantastic one. I love this video. Is this the same hole, Emma?
It is the same hole, yeah.
And it's still very light, you know, even though they are nocturnal animals, they will be busy during the day, depending on how hungry they are or if they've, you know, got jobs to do before they go out on their big night forage.
They're just big fluff balls at this stage. They're ridiculously cute.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's actually a hole that intersects two holes by the looks of it.
Mm-hmm. So you can see
this was common for them to have that one hole going off in two directions.
Yeah, so as they add new chambers to sets, they'll just keep branching and branching and branching. And sometimes if one of their exit holes to a burrow collapses, they'll actually just re-excavate a different exit hole out of a different section. So you can see the little tiny one doing a little crab walk out the side, and then he goes, no.
I get out the hole that's a bit steep, and this gives you a good idea of scale of how small these are compared to the adults.
And he just slides right back on into the hole because he's not strong enough yet.
So cute.
They're so cute.
So it is lovely when you get footage like this and you see the whole family interacting. It really gives you that sense that they have that strong sense of family and bonds, and the interactions between them are really important.
What cameras are you using there, Emma, then? Are you going to Will you be able to let us know?
They're really small. It's the one that was on the tree, and they're about £30 on eBay.
Really?
So, but the quality on this, I was very impressed with.
Are you allowed to tell us what model, or are you not allowed to tell us?
Yeah, we've got a little like info pack that we'll share at the end, just sort
okay.
of facts and summarizing a few of the points that we've discussed, and also there's some links to the several different types of recorder, the sort of higher end trail cameras, and then these sorts of like pocket cams that Emma's got that we've been using for a lot of this footage.
I think the problem with the ones I have is they're not actually branded, which is why I didn't give you the brand. And so I got mine on eBay, and they kind of disappear on and off because it's not a website where you go to buy them. I just look for them on eBay and Amazon. And if I'm lucky, then I'll kind of order several in one go. But I have shared the links in that document, which we can share with you if you'd like. Yeah. And then this is quite a funny story as well with these ones. So kind of as Amie mentioned, it is something new in these animals' environments. And if it's at their head height, they will often explore it. Camera traps are a non-invasive way to monitor wildlife, but that doesn't mean they're not curious. So the first one I'm going to show you is of a badger getting very up close and personal with one of my camera traps. And the second one, for those of you who were there on Monday, I showed you one of my camera traps that was eaten by a brown hyena. That wasn't in the UK, that was in South Africa. And I'll show you the last video my camera trap ever captured in the inside of brown hyena's mouth before my camera died. So just showing you how close animals can get.
This one's the badger though, isn't it, this side?
This is the badger, yeah.
Yeah, having a real good rummage around. I think, to be honest, I'd be the same if I woke up one day and out the front of my bedroom door somebody had whacked a great big camera.
I know, how rude.
Yeah.
That's his log. I don't know what I was doing there. You can see there, that's
the smell of your hands setting up. We were saying this in the office earlier, weren't they? Like, that's going to be something that they're going to be really curious about, because they can see that there's not a human there or another mammal, but that camera is going to stink of our hands and our detergents. So they're going to be really curious in that sense. And it's a really nice way of getting up close footage of an animal that would otherwise, you know, they're really heavily protected animals, and they're very, very shy most of the time when they can see you. So yeah, camera traps are great for capturing more elusive species. If you're suspicious there might be deer in the area, or, you know, animals like badgers, or even sort of amphibians, if you don't know if you've got anything in the lower parts of your garden. It all depends on where you place the camera, but you can answer those questions.
And in the UK, it's not really a problem that things will get eaten. This is more if you take it elsewhere. But I think that's one reason why the higher end cameras tend to not have a screen on the outside, because then the screen is protected and it won't get impaled like it does here by this brown hyena. So I think at the end you can see the tongue. It's probably still trying to fit it in its mouth here.
It did look a little bit badger-like in its face, didn't it, in the low light?
I know, yeah. Comparing those, there we go.
There we go.
We're inside the mouth, and that's the last video that camera trap ever captured. But I've kept it because it now has a lot of memories. And then, yeah, we just put together some top tips for camera trapping. We're happy to go through individual questions that might relate to you and how you want to use them. But something I guess we can learn from when we put them up on Monday is that it's good to check them regularly, just to check that it's running okay, that you're getting footage, that the batteries don't need changing. There's a lot of reasons why it's good. And also it's exciting. I often, when I put them up in the woods, I go and see just to check if I've got anything that day. And like you mentioned, Sue, you kind of keep your camera trap up all the time and move it around. Another way that you can do that if you have multiple camera traps is you can swap them out. So have one up and then take the other one away, swap it, so that you can have it continuously recording. So Some other advice to save you some time is to not watch the whole video. So when you've taken footage from the camera trap and put it on your laptop, you can choose how long the videos are, but they can be about 20, 30 seconds, maybe even a minute. And if you were to sit there and watch a week's worth of videos the whole way through, you'd be there a long time. So I'll just show you what I mean by that. So can you see my cursor on here? Yeah. So if you had loads of these videos and they were on your laptop, you wanted to see what was in it, I wouldn't play the whole thing. I'd drag this cursor down here and you can just slide it like this. So I'm just sliding it by scrolling it across. And this one, it's quite obvious that there's something right in front of the camera. But say you just had a bush or leaves and then right at the end, something ran through. This means you don't miss it, but you don't spend loads of time kind of going through it. And then do you want to talk a bit about labeling, Amy?
Yeah, just that when you get your footage off of your camera onto your computer, like Emma said, you might have, 60, 80, 100 odd files that you're going to go through. So going through them all and, making them play at double speed or dragging your cursor through to just really quickly check. It doesn't take long for your eyes to adjust to what the environment looks like and then picking up on movement. But yeah, when you're going through that data, just as you find something that's worth keeping, go back to the file list and rename it, whether you put badger or fox or mouse or whatever you want to keep. But just labeling it means that once you've gone through that whole list, you don't then go back and go, oh crap, which one's had something on? You can just go through, delete everything that you don't want to keep, and it just means you only keep hold of the really valuable data footage that's actually got the species you're after, and you don't end up storing gigabytes and gigabytes of unwanted footage.
It will make your life a lot easier, especially on like the 100th video of a leaf and you're like, oh my goodness, okay. And then the one thing in there, you want to have it labeled because you definitely don't want to go back and repeat that whole process again.
Yeah, absolutely. And also with checking them, a lot of cameras, most cameras are battery powered. So if you're using them for like maybe the third, fourth, fifth time, you're not sure how much battery there is, then getting out there after sort of day 1 or day 2 and just making sure they're still recording is really good to make sure you don't end up leaving a dud out.
And also then in terms of camera trap settings, I'm not going to talk through all of them in detail this evening, but I've put together a little video of just me recording kind of my favorite settings that I like to use. And we're going to put that link on the resource that we'll distribute. Everyone obviously has their own preferences, but there's just some that I've found that work quite well to maximize the amount of footage you're getting, but keeping maybe the space low, just things like that. But the best thing is to just kind of get started and you'll kind of figure it out as you go along, but that video is there for reference if you wanted.
Yeah, so I've just popped in a bit here about reporting your sightings. Reporting sightings is something that us wildlife enthusiasts really that has become so much more accessible for people to do, but it's something that we all should be doing. We all spend a lot of time out in nature. We all care about the preservation of our local green spaces, and one of the most direct ways that we can do that is making sure that those sightings and recordings, whether it's literally just keeping a species list of the birds that visit your garden, or reporting. The other day I was driving back from a site for the Avon Wildlife Trust, and I saw a brown hare, and I thought, oh God, this is really close to an area where I worked, and we didn't know that there was brown hares here. Getting into that habit of just reporting notable species, or just species that occupy an area, means that those records contribute towards the local plan. So if you know that there's a family of hedgehogs that lives at the end of your garden or in your local park, but the local planning authority don't, then they're not going to be able to factor in preserving spaces that are being used by notable species. So I've just included a couple of screenshots here. Again, this is detailed in the resource that we'll share, but the Avon wide organisation for record keeping is the Bristol Regional Environmental Record Centre, or BREC that it's often referred to. You literally just go to their website. They've got an option for send a record that then takes you to their recording page, which is annoyingly an extra step. But there you click on wildlife recording and then submit a sighting. And it's just this really simple form where you complete where you were, what the species was that you saw, roughly a few extra details. If you know it, then that's great. If you don't, then it's not a problem. It might ask you what life stage it was at, if it was an adult, a baby, whether it was eggs of something, or if it was even a dead carcass. But yeah, recording that, it's a great way for your local authority to keep track of invasive species, notable or protected species, and also it feeds into a lot of national strategies and local planning policies. So yeah, it's something that takes a little while to get into the habit of, but whether you just prefer to do it on your phone and report it as you see it, or maybe use an app like iNaturalist or iRecord, or, you know, there's lots of different ones. There's a butterfly conservation app. There's lots of different ones where you can click confirm, and then those records eventually find their way back to BREC. But the most direct way is just to let them know straight through their website.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really helpful to know, and I think for everyone in this region as well, to know where the go-to place is, because I think you hear a lot of sites and places where you can submit your records, but it's nice knowing that this is the best one for people living in this area.
Absolutely. And iNaturalist, there's a few sort of user things you have to consider when using iNaturalist, just about privacy settings. And again, we'll include that, where it, as long as you keep your privacy settings a certain way, it means that it does eventually make it back in a usable form to the local record centre. But the difference with the apps and reporting directly is that reporting directly means that within a matter of weeks, your record will be on the database. Whereas when you use those apps, it can be anything up to sort of 6 to 12 months, maybe even 18 months before those batches of records get sent to the record centre. And luckily for all of Avon, we all have the same record centre, so there's not any devolved places between, you know, Baines or South Gloss. So yeah.
No, brilliant. Thanks, Amy. It was great to include that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, just so that we can go through any questions. It can be about your personal camera traps, any questions about badgers, wildlife, anything you like.
Emma, I've got a quick question about the security of camera traps, because again, one of the things I want to do is put camera traps out in Pill Paddock. I suppose there's no real way of guaranteeing, is there, that it's not going to get tampered with. But maybe those sort of cheaper ones that you were talking about might be a better option than a more expensive camera trap as well, mightn't it?
I'd say you kind of have two main options. So what we did on Monday was the little cheap ones I have, I just camouflage them as best I can. So shove loads of leaves and branches down the side until you basically can't see it. That's my method for trying to not get it stolen. And then for the more expensive ones, they often have loops around the back where you can put on what's basically like a fancy bike lock, where you pull it and then it attaches it to the tree and you have a key for it. So that's what we used for the more expensive one, because we didn't want that to get stolen. So you kind of, can have a lock or just hide it really well, is, I would say, are the two options.
Okay, all right.
You'd be surprised as well. If you know where it is, it's generally going to be quite obvious. But if you're also familiar with an area, you know there are areas that are less well trodden, some good disguising, or putting it particularly high and angling down, or particularly low and angling up. Just trying to think about visually disguising it. But if you can get one with some of them have cases where they've actually got loops for those for the bike locks, which is great. And you don't necessarily have to buy it brand new. You can look for them secondhand, as with those the pocket cams. You can, that's what I'm calling the Emma's mystery eBay models. You can get the sort of higher end Bushnell trail cameras and just get older models that might be available on eBay, and then they'll still have those, because they're used more in like commercial industry trapping and hunting trapping as well. So they also need that lockability. So yeah, there's a couple of different options: tactical hiding, or actually aiming buy one with a lockable option.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, though. Does anyone else have any questions?
You spoke about scent earlier on, like camera traps, and obviously when you're in the area, is there anything you can do or that you'd recommend to reduce that?
Setting up downwind is great. Obviously, the wind does change throughout the evening, but if you want to be cautious, setting up with gloves, rubber gloves that you can wash with an unscented soap, and then use that to actually put the camera trap up, that's going to limit the amount of scent that you leave in the area. And yeah, that fantastic video of Emma being above the set and the little one was coming out, I'd guarantee that would be because Emma was downwind. Even though she was almost on top of the hole, that wind would have been blowing her scent away from it, because if it was going the other way, they would have known there was a mammal that wasn't a badger outside that hole. So yeah, just trying to take note of that. That's also the formal advice from the Badgers Trust if you're trying to watch badgers in your garden, is if you know where there's an access hole or a set opening or anything like that, being a reasonable distance and just making sure that you're out there on a night where your scent is being blown away means that they're much less likely to clock you and then run away.
Also, I think from their sense point of view, I've found I only get things investigating cameras when it's like at their level. So that badger, it's because it was right there, that was its log that it goes on every night. Whereas when I put them up angled down, they either don't see them or they do a little sniff and then keep walking and they don't really notice it. So I think it's only because I put it right there that was asking for something to come and stick its face in it.
Yeah. And whilst we're here, I'd like to plug to anyone that isn't already aware of the Wildlife Champions sister project, TWIAS, the Team Wilder Ecological Advisory Service. That is a project done under the same programme as Wildlife Champions that it gives free, impartial advice for improving your green space for ecological in ecological ways, improving it for wildlife and biodiversity. So if you have a garden or you're part of a community group or you share a green space that's managed, that you have permission to do things to, do feel free to get in touch to use the service. I know there's quite a few people on the call this evening that have either directly been recipients or Luke, absolutely get in touch, but you can get in touch by going to the Avon Wildlife Trust website and going to the get involved Team Wilder option, or just search the Team Wilder Ecological Advisory Service and we'll come up. We'll drop a link in the chat now, and if we've already given you advice, then we can chat about what's already worked well and if there's any sort of hurdles that you've hit. And if you haven't already used the service, then we can arrange to come and do a visit to your garden or green space and see if we can do something helpful, write a report or refer you to some different wildlife features that can be installed.
Yeah, Amy's brilliant. So definitely if she can come give advice, it's amazing. And if any of you have questions, not now, but if you say have been inspired by this and want to go out and buy your own camera trap, and then you buy it and like, oh, I don't remember what they said about settings, what do I do? You'll have my email from this event and Amy's. You can get in touch with us and we'd be happy to have a call or meet up and talk you through the settings, because I know at the beginning it can be quite hard getting your head around how to use it. And we'll be following up with a resource that has a lot of this information. And again, if you think anything's missing from there, just feel free to get in touch.
Yeah.
What software do you use to, you do that montage of videos? Are you using any particular software to do that?
I mean, I do quite a lot of editing just because I love doing it on the side. So I have Premiere Pro, which is an Adobe package.
Okay,
I think, that is a subscription-based thing that is paid for. But a really good free one that I'd recommend is called CapCut. I can show you what that looks like as an app. You can get it on your phone or on a laptop. And I've been using that recently and been very impressed with it. So
okay. Oh,
1 second, let me just unblur my background. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for that feedback. So these are some of the editing ones that I use. So if you have an Apple device, you can use iMovie. And then CapCut is the one that I've found recently is really impressive. It does a lot of the stuff that the paid software does. And you can use it on your phone or your laptop, which is quite nice. And just to point on that as well, if you're trying to get footage from your phone to your laptop, WeTransfer is really useful. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it's just a website called WeTransfer, and you can send up to 2 gigabytes of either picture or video for free. And then if you have a paid subscription, that goes all the way up to like 20, 40 gigabytes or unlimited if you pay them more money. And that seems to be a really good way in the industry for people to share videos amongst each other as well, because they can sometimes be quite large. But yeah, thank you all so much for attending this evening. We've hit 7 o'clock now. Do feel free to reach out if you have any questions. But thank you so much. And to the residents as well, a big thank you for having us on Monday.